Hello, in today's video I will show you how to make a Blood Knight. This build is great for anyone who is looking for something different from the meta builds and are tired of using triple shouts or just one-shotting every single hit. But if you are going to go with this build, just know it's nowhere near as good as another build, as you will not be able to one-shot anything. However, with that being said, you are still able to do all endgame content, including Nightmare 100, all the Uber bosses, Legion events, and Hell Tides. Alright, so let's start off with our skills and passive. Our first skill we're going to grab is Frenzy, and we're going to put 1 point in Frenzy, Enhanced Frenzy, and Battle Frenzy. However, if you're having survivability issues or wanting to push high Nightmare dungeons, then I would grab Combat Frenzy for that damage reduction. And then for our core skill, we're going to grab Rend, and we're going to max it out, get Enhanced Rend, and then finally Fierce Rend. And then coming to our defensive skills, we're going to grab 1 point into Rallying Cry, Enhanced Rallying Cry, and Tactical Rallying Cry. This is going to help us with our resource. And then next we're going to get Iron Skin, Enhanced Iron Skin, and Strategic Iron Skin. But if you do not have any issues getting fortified, then you can get Tactical Iron Skin for that heal. And then for our passive, we're going to grab Imposing Presence and Martial Vigor. This is just for survivability reasons, you can grab this. And then coming over to our brawling skills, we're going to get Aggressive Resistance, again, more damage reduction while berserking. If you do have Fury generation issues, you can grab Prolific Fury. However, if you do grab this, then you may need to take away points from other passives to make up for that. Or you will have to take away points from other passives to make up for that. And then for our weapon masteries, we're going to max out Rupture, Enhanced Rupture, and then get Fighter's Rupture. This is going to be our main sustain in this build. And then we're going to grab 1 point in Steel Grass, Enhanced Steel Grass, and Fighter's Steel Grass. This is how we're going to become Berserk, or one of our main ways of becoming Berserk. So imagining our Steel Grass is going to be very important with this build. And then coming to our passives, we're going to grab 1 point in Hamstring, just so we can apply it slow to our enemies. And then max out Cut to the Bone, increasing our damage against vulnerable enemies with our bleed effects. And then grab 6 Skin, Defensive Stance, and Counter Offensive. This will help us become Fortify, more damage reduction while Fortify, and more damage while Fortified. And then we're going to grab Pit Fighter, No Mercy, and Exposed Vulnerability. Exposed Vulnerability is one of those places where we can take away points to put into Prolific Fury. However, I'll at least keep 1 point in here, as this will be our main way of maintaining our vulnerability. And coming down to our ultimate skill trees, we're not going to grab anything here. However, if you do have high crit chance, high crit damage, then it may be worth taking heavy-handed and taking away points from maybe Pit Fighter or No Mercy, as normally bleed effects or dot effects in this game don't crit, but thanks to our key passive Gushing Wounds, when causing an enemy to bleed, you have a chance equal to your crit strike chance to increase bleed amount by 115% times your critical strike damage bonus. So thanks to this key passive, we can technically scale our bleed effects off our crit chance and crit damage. Okay, let's go over the aspects now. In our helmet, we're going to want Tusk Helm of Jorts the Mighty, or Disobedience. In our chest, Aspects of the Might. In our gloves, Weapon Master. In our pants, Tesses of the Dawning Sky, or Disobedience. And in our boots, Ghostwalker. If you're going to use Tusk Helm of Jorts the Mighty, then you're going to use Disobedience in your pants. If you use Tesses of the Dawning Sky, you're going to use Disobedience in your helmet. And then moving on to our rings and amulets. In our amulet, we're going to go with Battle Trance, our ring, Exfalt, and lastly, Starlight for our last ring. And quickly moving on to our weapons. In our two-handed mace, we're going to go with Edgemaster. And in our two-handed slashing, we're either going to go with Ancient's Oath or Fields of the Crimson. Fields of the Crimson seems to be a common drop, So if you have that, then use that until you find the Ancient's Oath. But once you have the Ancient's Oath, definitely use that. And in our single-handed weapons, we're going to use Earth Striker and Berserk Ripping. Okay, now that we gone over the aspects, we're going to talk about gear stats. So for our helmet, if you're using Tusculum of George the Mighty, you don't really have anything you can do about the stats, but if you do have a helmet, I would go for total armor, maximum life, and cooldown reduction. The fourth slot can either be Rupture or main stat, or resistance, depending on your resistance stats. You definitely want to max cap your resistance out, so if you need to put a resistance stat there on your helmet, then definitely do that. For the chest piece, we're going to go with total armor, maximum life, some form of elemental resistance, and some form of damage reduction. In our gloves, we're going to go with attack speed, crit chance, and lucky hit chance with plus ranks to skills. For our pants, again, total armor, maximum life, some form of elemental resistance, and damage reduction. Again, you can also swap this out for the unique pants, Testits of the Dawning Sky. Once you have that on, you don't have to really worry about the stats. And then for our boots, movement speed and triple resistance is what I usually go for. And then on our amulets, it's a unique, nothing you can do about that. Ring, again, unique, nothing you can do about that. And then for our last slot in the ring, we want crit chance, crit damage, vulnerable damage, and damage while berserking. Two-handed slashing, it's either going to be Ancient's Oath or Fields of Crimson, so nothing you can do about the stats over there. And then for our one-handed, we want strength, crit damage, vulnerable damage, and damage while berserking, and that's basically going to apply to the other two weapon slots. I believe the cap is somewhere around 9,000 for the armor at level 100, and Nightmare 100, you want it somewhere in the 13,000, and probably even higher once that new game mode comes out, Arbiter of the Zur, I believe it's called. So having some form of disobedience is the only way we're going to hit that cap. Well, not the only way, but the easiest way to hit that cap. If you swap gear, you definitely want to make sure you're hitting that 70%. And yeah, stacking out that vulnerable damage and damage while berserking, if I could find it, is a good way to multiply your damage thanks to our Paragon board with Blood Rage and Hemorrhage. For expertise, I'm gonna go with a two-handed sword just to guarantee that bleeding damage. I know on one of our weapons we have the aspect that bleeding damage while berserk, but you will not always be berserk, so you definitely want to have a way to guarantee damage over time effects, as it will proc our X-Fold, which is a massive portion of our damage. So let's go over the Paragon board now. In our first board, we're going to want to equip the Weapon Master glyph, as this is our build enabler. Hitting with a Weapon Mastery skill reduces the active cooldown of another random Weapon Mastery skill by 2 seconds. And by default, Rupture has 1 charge and Steelgrass has 2. But thanks to our legendary aspect, this will increase Rupture to 2 charges and Steelgrass to 3 charges, which gives us a very high uptime on our skills. And thanks to the first part of this glyph, we'll benefit massively from Iron Strength and Raw Power. And then going on to our second board, we're going to want to go with Blood Rage. Killing a bleeding enemy has 10% chance to grant Berserking for 5 seconds. Your damage is increased by 25% times of your damage while berserking bonus. So it's important to stack damage while berserking on gear, as well as grabbing any nodes that give us damage while berserking. As this is a multiplicative damage boost, it's a great way to increase our damage for the late game. And we're going to grab some damage reduction nodes and damage to bleeding enemies as well. And then in our socket, or our glyph socket, we're going to want to equip Disembowel. Now this is a flex glyph. You could choose to use this one or go with Ire for more damage and damage reduction while berserking. Would recommend you get in Fire Condition, as this will give us fire resistance and armor. If you do need more fire resistance, you grab the rare nodes. This will be gear dependent. And then on our third board, we're going to want to go with Carnage. And again, grabbing anything with damage while berserking on our way towards the socket. And for our glyph socket, we're going to equip Exploit for that vulnerable damage and guarantee vulnerable. Again, with the cold condition, you can either go for the magic node if you need more additional cold resistance. We're going to make our way to our fourth board, which is Decimator. Each time you make an enemy vulnerable, your damage is increased by 10% times for 5 seconds. Overpowering a vulnerable enemy grants additional 10% times bonus for 5 seconds. With this build, you basically have multiple guaranteed ways of applying vulnerable, so that should be no issue. Overpowering, we only have one guaranteed way, and that is with the weapon swapping from our legendary aspect. This one may not be up 100% of the time, but when it does, it is quite a bit of a damage boost. And for our socket, the Undaunted glyph, as this will give us damage while fortified and damage reduction. You could go for this rare node, you don't have to, as 8% potion healing is not that big of a deal, but having that 4% maximum life is nice. So if you have the extra points, grab it. Again, more vulnerable damage and armor. And then for our last board, we're going to go with Hemorrhage. Your bleeding damage is increased by 15% times of your vulnerable damage bonus. And my current bonus is at 43%. So stacking vulnerable damage is going to be huge, as this is another way to multiply our damage. Thanks to Hemorrhage and Blood Rage, we have two good ways of scaling our damage into the late game. So if you see vulnerable damage or damage while berserking on gear, those are two really good stats to have, as well as crit chance or crit damage thanks to our key passive, Gushing Wounds. And that's basically it for the Paragon board. Alright, now we have to go over our Vampiric powers. And as you'll notice right away that it might look a little strange, as I only have 4 Vampiric powers instead of 5. However, after going through these powers and explaining how they work, you'll understand why I run 4 and not 5. We're going to start off with Metamorphosis. When you evade, you turn into a cloud of bats, becoming unstoppable for 4 seconds. Enemies along your path take 160% physical damage and are inflicted with Vampiric Curse. So when you kill an enemy that is cursed, you store them as souls, and you can store up to 8. And you'll see in some of the gameplay that I will gather a bunch of enemies up with Steel Grass and then pop Iron Skin or Rallying Cry to activate my ghost. They actually hit for quite a bit, and having the Unstoppable is good for defensive reasons, especially if you get the additional evades with your boots. You can have up to 4 dashes. And overall, it's a really good survival skill as well as a damage skill. Next, we're going to go with Flowing Veins. You deal 60% increased damage over time to enemies that are moving or affected by a Vampiric Curse. So this synergizes with our Metamorphosis, and as well as our Steel Grass, as we could force them to move. Again, 60% times increase is actually huge. As you can see with our unique, we only get 20% times increased bleeding damage. So this is 3 times better than our unique. Next, we're going to go with Sanguine Brace. This is great for getting fortified, as well as giving us crit chance. And lastly, we're going to go with Moonrise. Hitting an enemy with a basic skill grants you 4% attack speed for 10 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. Upon reaching maximum stacks, you enter Vampiric Blood Rage, gaining 160% times basic skill damage and 15% movement speed for 10 seconds. This synergizes perfectly with our Frenzy, as well as our Battle Trance. Because we're going to try to hit 5 stacks anyways, you're going to get a huge benefit once you hit 5 basic attacks, not only in attack speed and damage, but also survivability. And this actually does take the max amount of packs to run all 4 of these powers. It's not actually possible to run a 5th one unless we're willing to drop some of these powers. maybe you could drop Sanguine Brace, but even if you do, you only save 2 slots and you still have to make up for it. It'll still be really tough to run 5 powers with this setup. And so far, the 4 power setup actually works pretty well, as I could do all content in the game, including Nightmare 100. But maybe there's a better setup with 5 instead of 4. I know it looks a little weird, but it's how I've been running it so far. Thanks for watching today's video, and I hope you guys get a chance to try out this Blood Knight build, as it's pretty fun and something just a little different from the current meta. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day.